out in the room, because I knew when I got in the room I could cut through. I knew that I could interview better than other people because I backed myself and I prepared a lot thanks to the coursework. And so I got a seat at the table, I pitched myself and I got the job.
From Ministry of Work, welcome to Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds podcast, a show about Greater Manchester's pioneers, entrepreneurs and visionaries, and the stories that brought their ideas to life. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and on today's show I'm joined by Izzy Panton. From growing up in Bury to forging a career with UA92 and now as the commercial lead for The Overlap, Izzy is a northern powerhouse, featuring on ITV and the New York Post as a leading Manchester voice for good. Izzy is someone who deeply understands how to connect with people, especially ambitious women aged 18 to 35, and shows up for them in a way that sticks as she shares daily career and interview advice as the corporate agony aunt on Instagram and TikTok, amassing a huge following.
I grew up in Bury, I'm a Bury girl, born and bred, so Somerset actually, which is just outside of the main centre. And I remember going to school in Rosendale and thinking, oh, this must be industry, like this must be what like a busier town looks like. And it wasn't for lack of understanding Manchester City and the city itself and how amazing it was. I just had quite strict parents. Right. So I was really not allowed on like the metro to go shopping with my friends in town until I was maybe like 16, 17. Yeah. And I remember going to Manchester for the first time and being like, oh my goodness, what a city. Yeah, I thought Rosendale was the city compared to my small village. So definitely like a small town girl in terms of where I've grown up, but absolutely like love the countryside, can appreciate the beauty of like outer Manchester, but then I've always had this natural gravitation towards the city, I think, because genuinely it represents everything that strict parents don't allow you to have. No boundaries, like anything is possible, a big dreamer. My dad used to go and work in London and Manchester really often. Because of that, I never had a big ambition of like being in a particular industry or anything in particular. I just knew I was going to be a businesswoman, and I didn't know what that meant, really? And I didn't know what it looked like.
What, from young?
Yeah, because I thought that was the only reference I had of like what it was to go to work every day, really. Yeah. Role models in that sense weren't so accessible. Like my uncle worked in tech, but I couldn't really comprehend what that was when I was young. And so my dad was my working role model, and he loved his work. He seemed to love his work, and people loved him. And if I ever tailed him to London, people would love him. And I was like, I'm just going to do that. Like, this seems like
whatever he's
social.
Doing. Yeah.
I'm a businesswoman. And honestly, I think probably that's what I've ended up becoming, but I still couldn't quite tell you what it exactly is that I do or what I'm good at. It's just, I just lean into like a social situation in the context of work, and I seem to do okay.
Love that. How did you at school? Did you enjoy school? Was it something you fought against? Or
someone would tell you I was teacher's pet. I absolutely was. Like, strict parents means you're not going home with detention. There's no two ways about it. Never had a detention in my life, apart from when like the whole class go on. And I was absolutely devastated.
The whole class one, honest. Yeah.
So I was really studious, but I wasn't, naturally gifted when it came to exams and stuff like that. I just really tried really hard. Like both my sister and I used to do extra projects, which in retrospect was like quite sad. But it's put me in good stead now. Same for her. So I tried at school. I tried really hard. I had to try hard, but I was happy to do so. Yeah. And like joined in on the netball team, played flute, did all the extracurricular activities. So do you know there's memes going around where it's like, do you ever meet someone and you can tell that they had an active role on campus? That was me. That was me, like doing the extras since I was a kid. But yeah, I liked school, not so much high school. I think it can get quite mean. But then sixth form, I kind of came into my own again. Got a bit funnier, maybe a bit prettier, and I had a better time.
Yeah, it helps. And what after sort of high school, college? Then what did you do next?
And then I decided to go to university, and I just knew that I wanted to go to anywhere that wasn't too close to home. So I ended up at Northumbria University in the northeast. Yeah. I don't think I'd even visited it when I went, but they had good netball and a good social, and that was enough for me.
Good a reason as any.
Yeah, and I loved it. I did business with HR. If I went to university now, I probably wouldn't study that because I do feel like most of what I've learned has been post then or pre then, from my dad. But the actual life experience itself is never, ever quantified when it comes to university because moving away is hard to replicate.
Big thing.
Yeah.
Right? I think you can do any degree.
You can do anything.
not doesn't matter. It obviously does if you're going to be a brain surgeon, but
Yeah.
generally it's the life experience you're going to get when you're there, right?
Yeah, it just there's so much value in apprenticeships. I'm so for them. There's so much value
Agreed.
in just like going straight into work. But that moving away from parents, particularly when they're quite strict, proudly so, is like a completely unique experience. I remember my mum calling me almost every day to see what I was up to, and I felt like I was telling her what I was doing, and then all of a sudden it dawned on me that I can do whatever I want, and that was like the most liberating.
See you, Mum.
Bye, don't call me again. That was like the most liberating. I think I did 4 years of my life. Yeah.
Cool. And where did you go into after that? Did you go straight into work after uni?
They encouraged us, which was brilliant, I think, to do a year in industry. So I did a year at Enterprise Rent-A-Car as part of my degree, and I came back to Bolton for that. And then I, one of the corporate accounts that I'd signed, this is when I realised what the gift of the gab really was. One of the corporate accounts that I'd signed at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, I always looked after them. I really liked the lady called Kath. And so as a result, she was championing in me to have a job with them once I graduated. So I handed in my dissertation in my final year in the May 1st, let's say, and May 2nd I started working for them. So that's when I really understood like the power of actually actively networking, like building these relationships. And I think most people don't get a really good appreciation for that until later on in their career.
Totally.
But it came to fruition so quickly. And genuinely since then, in different forms and iterations, I've heavily invested in like the personal brand networking event piece, because I know that it reaped the rewards. To walk into a job as a brand new grad, like it's almost unheard of unless you're a Nepo baby, which I'm absolutely not.
No, and I think we can probably delve into it a bit more, but that whole idea of doing things that other people don't do at that early stage, it is so powerful.
Yeah.
I look back even at my sort of career, the places that I've had the best success is by just pushing the envelope a little bit.
Yeah, doing it differently.
Yeah.
And I think that really compounds when you're younger as well. Like those first 5
Yeah, because it's even more impressive. It makes you stand out even more, doesn't it?
like there's so much white noise that the older you get, there's so many more people competing. But if you're a youngster coming through, a bit of a whippersnapper, and you're like pushing the boundaries, asking for forgiveness, not for permission, which was very contrary to how I was in my childhood, I just turned into this unapologetically cheeky person that asks for more and got more. And I think we're not taught to ask.
Yeah, where do you think that bit came from?
I'd see my dad do a deal or smooth talk someone into whatever business it was at the time, and I'd be like, God, how has he done that? I don't know. And I was always naturally extroverted. You know, they made me ask for the bill from like a very early age. I knew what it was to talk to adults. So I think I just developed this confidence that did grow through uni. I was doing really well in my assignments, and like I said to you, academically, exam-wise, I really struggled, but my coursework, I was smashing it, and I was like, oh my God, I'm smart. And my granddad started proofing my assignments for me, and he started telling me I was his smartest grandchild. And honestly, there's something psychological about someone speaking so positively about your capability. And I just started thinking,
especially if you don't know it, I think as well. Like I've had a few instances of that. I remember in my old job, there was I was a police officer, and one of the coppers at the time was like, Eddie, like his words, not mine, were you're too clever to be in the cops, you need to be doing something else. And I don't know, I was from a small town and didn't really ever give myself any credence, but then all of a sudden someone else says it, you go,
Yeah, it wasn't that I was like really overly humble or I lack confidence. It's like it just actually sometimes takes someone to say something to you to be like, no, I actually am really smart.
I can do this.
Because also I did have a narrative with myself that was like, oh, education is hard. I find it quite hard. I try hard, but I find it hard. And so uni just unlocked this new confidence in me. A really great competence for copywriting and long form writing as well, which I don't think is to be underestimated. Writing a dissertation is no easy feat. And I realised I was good at writing, or I got better at it if not. And it honestly, like, it's when you sit in these moments that you realise how connected everything is. But I was like, wow, personal brand, copywriting, self-promotion, they all knock on.
They're all coming together. Yeah. So obviously you had your time there at the Enterprise Rent-A-Car.
Oh, yeah.
Enjoy that?
I loved who I worked with. It was a hard graft. It's changed a lot since then. I'm still in touch with quite a few people that work there. My branch manager, Flick, was like my first experience of a manager, female manager, absolute boss. Like, smashed it. All the boys were scared of her. Highest performer. She was amazing. So I had a great experience there. And in my final year, I went on to be like campus brand ambassador for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. So that was where if you found grads that wanted to come and do their graduate scheme, you sort of got a commission for doing that. And yeah, it was hard. It was 7 days a week at the Bolton branch. So I didn't know, but unbeknownst to us, we'd signed to opt out. Well, I didn't read the paperwork.
Yeah.
I'd signed to opt out of the European working hours clause. So I did you could quite comfortably do 9 to 10 days on in branch in Bolton before getting a day off. And
Wow.
I always say to people, that is the best lesson in a hard job, because when you get a good one, a cushy one, this work from
100%.
home hybrid life, I always think this is so easy. Even if I'm having a bad day, it's so good to benchmark against something.
Yeah,
that's
you
such
need a
hard
bad.
craft.
I do agree that you need a bad
Everyone
job
needs one.
that's been really difficult to really
Yeah.
appreciate what you've got.
Yeah.
Totally. And what made you, or when did you decide to move on from that?
So that was the placement year. I did that in my final year, and then I started working for this company that had offered me the job from my corporate customer service. So I did sort of 6 months there. I really enjoyed it. I had free reign. They had no marketing, no ops, no sort of project management resource bar me. So I was kind of allowed to do what I wanted. But that's another lesson in learning where you don't want to be culturally. So I realised that whilst I loved Kath, again, my second ever boss, absolutely amazing, still in touch with her now, absolute profound impact on my entire life, I was bored. I was so bored in the office. There was no chat. We would just talk about Emmerdale maybe, but nothing. I realised I really wanted a culture where people were a bit younger, more diverse, more people, more going on, a bit more of a social, which is important, I think, when you're young.
Yeah.
And so that's when I ended up at UK Fast, because that at the time was one of the best cultures in the UK on all of the publicity.
I remember visiting it, and it was vibrant, loads going on.
Slides in the office. So, and that's how I ended up there. I was just I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted something that was going to be a bit more socially stimulating. And I went into an entry-level role there, an inbound sales role.
Mm-hmm.
And within 18 months, I was running that department that I'd joined.
Wow.
And I think I'd nearly doubled my salary from entry-level to director of something. And there were quite a few titles like that. So the title was redundant, but the salary increase was pretty impressive.
Yeah, amazing.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, I've been asking for stuff. I've been putting my hat in the ring. I've been doing the extras, doing the extra things to get noticed, playing the netball team again. And I just learnt this formula for being able to promote myself, get myself promoted. And I credit a lot of my trajectory to that time because it was pretty transformative. And then I did a bit of a stint in the cybersecurity company as well. You're a cybersecurity guy, so I'm sure we've got some mutuals there. And then I was just done. I did 4 years. I wasn't going to progress anymore. And I ended up at a company called PHMG, which is quite a Manchester staple. I don't know if you've come across it before, but I was head of client services there. I decided that what I wanted to do was shift from a national sort of client-based customers to an international one. So I was looking after the EFA region. And then COVID hit, and I was like, oh, is this my job? Is this what I do? Because the minute you start at home doing that job,
it sort of exposes everything, doesn't it?
Oh my God, I don't enjoy this whatsoever. And it brought me to UN92.
And interesting then, so you've gone from that sort of national role.
Mm-hmm.
Was that quite a deliberate right, I've done national now, what's the next thing?
It was a national customer base, so it was just a local role really for all intent and purposes, but the customers were UK based predominantly. And I remember thinking, I don't have a global client exposure. And I don't know why I knew that, but I knew that would actually be quite useful. And PHMG represented that, so I moved there. It's so weird because there wasn't much method to my madness other than I get an idea in my head and I think that's the right thing to do, and then I'll pursue it.
Well, sometimes that's all you need. It's kind of that, not the one-track mind, is it? But you've got a destination where you're trying to get to.
Yeah.
And if you've got your eyes set on it, you can get there a bit quicker.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
And then, then you end up at UA92.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that come about, and what did that entail? Did that deliver on the things you were looking for that were maybe missing?
Yeah, so I'm going to sound like a crazy manifesting weirdo, but I have this unicorn list of brands that I would really like to work for back then. And UA92 was on there. A couple of years before, I'd sat at a wedding, my cousin's wedding, with another girl who was director of marketing at UA92, and we chatted, I got on, left it at that. I knew she loved her job. I remember she loved her job. And then the PHMG building was directly opposite UA92, and I was refreshing all the time to just check what vacancies they had.
Just looking across
on
the
work
road.
Time. Yeah, literally binoculars. And a role came up for head of student recruitment and admissions. It was the title at the time. And if you read the job description, you wouldn't have applied. With my experience, it was very higher education orientated. Most women would look at that and think, I don't have the skill set that they're asking for. I don't have the desirables, so I'm not going to do it. But I was like, I know Stacey. I'm going to message her and say, do you think I'm in with a chance? Do you think I like the culture? let me know. And she was so positive, so supportive. So I went for it. And I remember thinking, and still to this day, that was the best job application I'd ever done, because I was like, I'm an outsider. I am going to give this every single thing that I've got to make them at least hear me out in the room, because I knew when I got in the room, I could cut through. I knew that I could interview better than other people because I backed myself and I prepared a lot, thanks to the coursework.
Yeah.
And so, I got a seat at the table, I pitched myself, and I got the job.
And crucially, you probably also understood your own weaknesses there.
Every single interview I've ever had, or even applications, you can see the one that I just did for the overlap. At the end, I had a slide that said, I know what you're thinking. I haven't got the experience in this. And I'll address that. And then I'll say, but look at all these times I've learned something entirely new. So people have this fixed mindset when it comes to transferable skills and, well, I don't have this experience. But in actual fact, if you've demonstrated you've been able to learn IT hosting, aesthetic devices, the automotive industry, and then audio branding.
It doesn't matter
It doesn't
what you
really
turn your
matter.
hand to.
I can learn anything, especially if I've learnt boring subjects. Best believe I can learn about education, which, back to your question, I was a lot more looking for something that was like intrinsically more rewarding. After the George Floyd murder in lockdown, and quite a few things that were happening culturally, I just felt like I really wanted to be aligned with something that, one, was culturally reflective of what I stood for, that became incredibly important to me, and two, where I felt like I was actually having some sort of positive impact that wasn't just monetary, because all of my roles so far have just been ruthlessly commercial and just about making more money for more millionaires, which that is what makes the world go round.
But it's nice to
have something that's
have an
not
actual
soul destroying,
and have an impact. And the thing I always talk about is like, what is your legacy going to be? I think that's something most people should. In fact, one of our guests made a good point. It's like, if you could write your own eulogy, what would it say? And it's like, I'm going to have a think about that, and try and put some thought and time into that, because what do you want to be remembered as?
I used to think I wanted to change the world, and that was like a really big delusion of grandeur. When I said it out loud, people would be like, who the hell is Izzy from Bury to change the world? But I've realised the incremental impact from just changing something over here, tiny little thing in Manchester, that has a global impact.
Totally.
Helping young kids go to university that would never ever consider university before now, first in the family, on free school meals, no role models in university. Helping them go to university has a generational impact on generations to come. So I've realised that these small changes can actually have a global impact. But much more than that, that was my eulogy, if you will. That's what I wanted. And in actual fact, now I've had my daughter, I just want to be known for being really present and making people feel good in the spaces that I'm in. I don't have these big goals to help as many people.
Why do you think that's changed?
I think I spread myself really thin for a very long time, and to the point of people pleasing, even though I'm not an actual people pleaser.
Yeah.
And now I've got my daughter, I think I have to prioritise me and mine, my inner circle. And then absolutely, if the stuff that I can do outside of that has a positive impact, that's beautiful. But my responsibility is here, and that's my priority. And that's not relating to anything charitable or CSR or anything. That's completely different. But I used to say, people will say about me that she changed the world. I don't care. I don't care what people say about me. I care what my inner circle say about me. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, it's weird. Like when you have kids, it's the classic. It changes everything.
Yeah.
But that I can really resonate with spreading yourself too thin and working like
a dog.
Yeah. Working like a dog and working extra hard to be present.
Yeah.
Is even harder when you've got kids.
Yeah, definitely.
Like one of the hardest. So the role now. The role obviously then you then moved on. So how did the new role?
Yeah. So
the overlap.
Well, within 12, 18 months at UA92, I was promoted to Director of Student Recruitment. Again, I did extra, I did the most. I was doing my personal brand, building my reputation. It helped them, it helped me. You keep front of mind of who people are thinking about. And I knew that I was on conversation for being someone that was talented and really passionate about UA92. And that still stands. I'm absolutely so passionate about what they're doing there. But again, like we just talked about, I went on maternity leave and my priorities changed again. And that job requires like a lot of presence. It's, 6 days a week when we've got open day events and applicant visit days and stuff. And I never want to do anything half-hearted.
Yeah, if you're going to do it.
If I'm going to do it, I'm going to give it my all. And Izzy 3-4 years ago couldn't comprehend wanting something that was only 3 days a week. I still do. I love to work. But I just decided that 3 days was something that it was my non-negotiable. And I'd really started to build my freelance work up as well. So I was kind of like leaning towards doing that full time.
Yeah, and what was that doing exactly?
A bit of everything, throwing enough shit at the wall and seeing what sticks was my strategy, I'll be
There you go.
honest.
No wrong with that. That's what I did.
It works. I think a lot of, again, I hate to generalise, but a lot of women, especially the ones that I work with, from a founder perspective, they want a concrete plan all the time. And it's like, I need to have the plan, and then I need to rationalise the plan, and then it needs to iterate. And in actual fact, just get started. You can perfect it after. And I've started to do that quite often, which was, honestly, I'm quite a risk-averse person when it comes to money and stuff like that. So it's contrary to who I have been. But I realise that I know what I'm good at. I can ghost write for people. I can go in and do LinkedIn sales training that's above and beyond the typical LinkedIn training that people do on personal brand. It's more about lead generation and centred around all the sales experience that I had. I was doing some retained consultancy. I literally had maybe 4 to 5 income streams, like, that together was pretty reasonable. And if I'd pursued it full time, could be much bigger. Well, sat right here today, but I resigned with no intention of getting another job elsewhere. And then Gary approached me with this position at the Overlap, and it felt too good to be true. And I've always tried to stay ahead of what was, current. So like in my mind, long form content, YouTube, this is the future, even if it iterates again. And I wanted to get ahead of what most people's common understanding of podcasts were and the intricacies of it.
And I think you can kind of see that even just through the roles you've held. Like at the time, UK Fast would have been like front and foremost.
That was cutting edge.
UA92 was, and
yeah.
now the Overlap is.
Yeah.
But you've kind of been on the front foot with that all the time.
Yeah, and you know what that is? It's being really open to everything all the time, and also being in tune with the market. I think a lot of people get a job they absolutely adore and they're really loyal to it, and that's so nice. But then the next week, genuinely, they might go through restructure or redundancy. You've not kept your finger on the pulse. So you become disconnected. There's a way to show up online that keeps you present, I keep using that word, without having to be really tiring or arduous, but it allows you to stay relevant to what's going on and resonate with any changes. So I think I said to my friends in the summer, I said, the next thing, if I did get a gig, it'd be something in the sports and media space. I love sport. I can consume any sport. It's like something I thoroughly enjoy. That was the intrinsic reward, if you will. And then I knew that long form media was the thing. And if I can learn that faster than the rest of the 99% of people that aren't in this space, I'm going to fly.
It opens up then media as an opportunity to like both your own media, but also going into that whole industry and what else you could do there, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I do a lot of my trajectory has been luck, timing, but I genuinely do believe the harder you work, the luckier you get. And it's the most rubbish overused quote ever. Someone needs to reframe that. But I knew that if I did work hard, I would put
It's no coincidence.
It's no coincidence, no.
Because I agree. It's one of those classic cliches, but similarly, if you don't work as hard as that, you can't be in the position to benefit from the luck that might or might not come along. Exactly. It might never come along.
Gary would never have hired me again if I'd been rubbish at my old job and if I'd burnt any bridges.
Yeah, if you hadn't gone above and beyond all that sort of stuff.
So I know that I created my own luck, but I also know that the brands I've worked for have been pretty.
And what's it like working there now? What's your sort of day-to-day look like? So
I'm responsible mainly for all the sponsorships and managing our existing sponsors and acquiring new sponsorship relationships. But, a vein of that is working with the media agencies in the north as well, some in the south. So day to day is really just meetings, a lot of calls, meetings. Next week we have filming. I'll bring a couple of the reps from the agencies locally. So there's a little star factor, get to watch some of the production. But, that's not the thing that was important to me. I like the relationship piece, and I'm able to sort of tap into my network and make sure people know how they can reach out to the Overlap. A lot of people know how to access Gary, but that doesn't translate to how to actually get a meeting in with the Overlap necessarily, because he's the busiest man in the UK.
Yes.
So knowing that people can come through me, to actually have those conversations. But it's generally because I work 3 days, back-to-back meetings. But I feel at the end of the day, I'm like, you can't say I didn't work hard today. I'm shattered.
And probably not just 3 days.
I'm shattered.
I'm
no, it's not 3 days in anyway.
Get paid 3 days, but work 5. Interesting. I think the thing that fascinates me most about your journey is that continuous thread of going above and beyond, delving into and being sort of experimental and wanting to develop your own personal brand. So do you want, if you don't mind, just delving into a little bit of what you think has worked so well for you in terms of helping your career progression, establishing yourself in terms of that personal branding? Like what could people listening to this kind of take away and do you think? Some of the things that you found successful?
I think I have a unique advantage or disadvantage depending on how you frame it, which is I am the loudest girl in the room before I've even spoken. And I knew that I am tall, I am unapologetically myself, I'm quietly confident, I am pretty happy, but really I'm mixed race. And in a lot of the spaces that I work in, there's a lot of white men and there's no one that looks like me. So I decided that that was my superpower, not my weakness. Yep. So I do think I have a unique position where I'm memorable, and I know that I am, and I'm not afraid to say it, but I wanted to be memorable for the right reasons, not for anything centered around tokenism or presenteeism. So I know I push myself harder than anyone else because, one, I know I'm capable of more, but also, two, I want to prove everyone that's ever had a preconception around talent or diverse talent or marginalized talent that I am the best. And if you take a risk on someone like me, you can leverage other people's loud and have the best people. So I think my experience is slightly different in that regard. But what people can take away, the self-promotion part is free. It's just mastery, and it can feel icky, and it's got so diluted. The word is awful now, but really and truly all it is making yourself known, not well known well for the things that you stand for. I know what I stand for. I know what I want to be known for, but most importantly, I know how I want to make people feel. And I think I've focused on those meaningful, authentic relationships, and that's what yields one LinkedIn post generating me X amount of business, because people know I've learnt to trust me and know my story. Yeah. So I think I would say that don't hide behind your employer as your reason not to build your personal brand or self-promote, because your employer is interested in your development with them and nothing thereafter. And the secret to success and feeling stable in your career is building your own resilience and redundancy by having a bit of a plan B all the time that runs concurrently 100%. With your plan A.
And also, as an employer, if that person then develops this amazing personal brand, they are acutely aware that you've got options. And
that's when you get promoted. They don't want to leave you.
Of course not. Yeah. And you know, that the win can be for both. It doesn't building that personal brand doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to move on. It just means that you'll be harder to keep, but quite rightly so as well, because you're going above and beyond and doing more than everyone else.
Yeah, and also everyone's got something to say. So I think that's another common thing. People say to me, I don't know what I've got to talk about. And I say to them, what's the favourite part of your job? What was the most interesting book you read last week? What's the best thing you've ever learned? What's the biggest mistake you've ever made? They can all answer that. People can wax lyrical about their own lives. And I'm like, do you know that's really interesting to someone who is this? Do you know that could be really interesting to this person? And I think we have to be passionate about our own stories a bit more, which isn't very British, I think. It's a cultural thing.
And we people like to tear each other down quite readily.
And I get torn down quite a lot across social media. Really? But the way I see it, which could be slightly toxic, is that it drives my engagement. So every time someone's insulting me in the comments.
Like what?
This is so trivial, but like on a TikTok the other day, I've been to France recently. My face tanned more than, it was winter, so I had a jumper on. Anyway, you could see my neck and it looks a bit paler than my face. And someone was like, please God, make sure your foundation matches your body. And I was like, oh, so sorry. I was really polite on the way on my response, and she just kept trolling me. So I just carried on. I joined in.
That's just
it's exhausting, but it's engagement.
Well, exactly. It helps push it further up. So funnily enough, one of the founders we had on here, Jenny, she's got bunions, so she developed her own shoe business around making comfortable shoes for people with bunions. And so she's like the most trolled person ever. She's got like the most like famous feet for the wrong reasons. And she gets loads of very, very weird messages. Yeah. But she's like, sweet engagement, thanks very much.
I don't care. Like it's just sad that's where we're at.
It's a dominant, the sad acts who are on the internet who really just feel the need to tear down strangers that they've never met.
Do you know, especially on LinkedIn, I think, I can see your employer. Yeah. So why are you trying to see where you work? What are you doing? But they'll get their karma, it's fine.
Exactly. I think for me, the bit that excites me most about is the legacy you can leave from where I sit is that getting people to realise if they stand up and be counted for, they can achieve more.
Yeah, that was my whole motivation behind the corporate agony and stuff that I've started. So when I was on maternity leave, my brain started to itch. Like I had to itch the scratch, but I also didn't want to do anything that took me away from my daughter. She's a terrible sleeper, and I found myself in the car all of the time, like nap trapped in the car. Yeah. That was I've never driven through so many drive-through coffee places in my life. So I started just filming career advice but the niche stuff, so not like the really bog standard how to write a CV, the stuff about like nuance in an interview that we don't get taught, and that unless you've got a big sister in business, which is how I coin myself, like you don't get told these things, and there's a lot of them are implicit, and a lot of, unless you've grown up in the right network, you don't know, you aren't taught about body language and how you greet people and leaving a lasting impact. So I started doing these little videos, these silly little videos I call them, on TikTok whilst I was nap trapped, and they went viral and they started going really well, and I was like, there's something in this. And my sisters would always come to me for career advice, all my friends would always come to me, so I thought, I'm qualified to talk about this because I'm talking from my experience of my career. Like, I'm not saying I'm a careers expert in a theoretical perspective. I'm saying I've taught the talk, so I walk the walk so I can talk the talk. So I started there and it started going really well. And then just January gone, I started building it on Instagram as well, because that's what my friends told me I needed to do. I think that's at 50,000 followers now.
Wow.
TikTok's well over 70, nearly 80,000 followers, I think. And so I'm just in the sort of infancy of, better understanding the business model behind it, so I can take that message further, serve those people that can't access the data and the information that they need. That's why I lean into the trolls, because it means that more people see the content. But yeah, that legacy piece for me, sort of now in my new version of me, is around how I can create the most impact for the least amount of work, and the internet really does allow you to scale that.
Yeah, and so that's going to be, is that like sort of a side project, that you want to have as part of your legacy ultimately?
Yeah, I don't want it to be a side project, to be honest. Okay. Like, my bigger plans are that would be like my main hustle eventually, and that I'll diversify that beyond just the sort of B2C, the end user, which is sort of a 18 to 35-year-old female that needs a bit more confidence in their career. It's like working with the big companies that struggle to hire that demographic and put in their vacancies,
struggle to hire and how to make it more accessible,
training them, upskilling them, giving them access to that community. So that creates more meaningful impact, because then it's not just advice, it's opportunity. And then if you connect people to the opportunity and they get that job, then that's when that generational impact comes back again. So I think I've took so many facets of my career, the career advice that I learned the hard way, but also the intrinsic reward that I felt at the university, and also liaising with the students all the time. You kind of know what people need, and it's just all come to fruition. For years, I've said to my dad and my friends, what's my thing? What am I good at? Yeah. Not for lack of confidence, but again, it's like, what's my thing? What will be my thing?
But it's interesting how it'll come. When I was sort of doing the background research on this, on paper it's quite evident.
Yeah, but you just don't really look at yourself.
But when you're living,
that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
when you're living in it, it's not like I'm not selling shoes. I'm not selling.
Yeah, I don't have a product. So I'm good at chatting. Like, that isn't a thing. That's not a strength. Like, most people are, and it turns out some people are. Not everyone is. But if you brought me your, potted history, I can look at that and tell you what you should do next. Like, I'm sure we'll talk about it later. Yeah, but it's so hard to do it for yourself because you're so subjective and your career is your baby, and it's hard to like think outside the box. But I honestly felt this relief, or this wave of like, this is my thing, whatever it turns out to be. If this is version 1 and I have to get to version 55 before it becomes something that's worth it, if it's rooted and started here, then I'm so happy.
And I think that's a true legacy piece.
Yeah. I hope so.
That's Izzy Panton, commercial lead at The Overlap. Thanks so much for listening to the show this week, and please do make sure to click the follow button on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to check out Ministry of Work, where you can also sign up for a free trial day. This episode was produced, recorded and edited right here at Ministry of Work, with a special thanks to our studio manager Dan Brown, and of course to you for listening. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and this has been Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds.